Thank you, my Lord. My Lord, just a few things that I think I need to clear up to the court. Some new witnesses came to the fore, and we really worked very hard trying to sort out. Until late last night we worked. But there's really a lot of work that needs to be done, and there's even further new witnesses that we've got to sort out. I know it's not an open-ended matter, but still we've got to listen to these witnesses and ensure that it's not Trojan horses that's been dumped on us, my Lord. So it's very important that we take it carefully and that we consult with these witnesses, my Lord. We've got other witnesses for the day. We did consult with Mr. Adam, my learner junior will lead his evidence, my Lord, but there are two other witnesses that the state is really looking and checking the records and consulting with the witnesses, and we must just take it carefully, my Lord.
But then, as I say, I'll only be prepared to listen to witnesses that would be or would have been in the vicinity of John Foster Square on that day, on the 27th of October. Any other fellow witnesses, we cannot make this very openly. If those witnesses are members of the security branch who were in John Foster Square, or members of the uniformed police who were there, or a civilian who was there, I'll be prepared to listen to such witnesses. Beyond that, I think we need to reach a stage where we must take it.
As the court pleases, my Lord, I'm working with General Eleanor Groenewald in this regard, and we're really checking to see that it's relevant witnesses for this court. But some of them is also scared, my Lord, so it's also important that we check properly, my Lord.
Please go ahead with the assistance of Captain.
Yes, I've got the assistance of Captain.
How much time am I going to need?
My Lord, I'll work and we'll work through the weekend till next week. Obviously, over the weekend, we'll see some of the witnesses conclude, see if they're relevant, take their statements. So we will not be able to conclude before the weekend. I'm thinking that we will go into next week at least till Tuesday, my Lord.
Tuesday, but then if there may be a need for rebuttal,
yes, that's the point.
Witnesses by the other members of the police, then we will hear them.
Exactly.
But let's try and keep it that way.
As the court pleases, my Lord.
And because it won't help us to keep it open, we need to reach a stage where we conclude this.
As the court pleases, my Lord, but still it's very important because they came forward exactly because the court extended the invitation, and we've got to do properly. Exactly.
Someone phoned my registrar's office and asked me to contact them. These are security branch members, and for that reason, then I think we will then have to extend until next week, Wednesday. So let's hear the evidence that's available.
As a court, my learned junior will lead the first witness. Thank you, my Lord.
Nothing further from our side. We agree with the time estimations of the court.
In fact, we will not sit tomorrow, but we will sit on Monday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yes, I could.
Cancel time to consult with these witnesses and get the information and send us our
as the court pleases.
Yes, my Lord. I'm in full agreement, my Lord. As I've already also mentioned, my Lord, there is a possibility of a new member that might be implicated, and I first will need the affidavits and the full allegations from these new witnesses to enable me to consult with them and also to see in what extent it impacts on the two witnesses that I'm already representing, to see what rebuttal evidence we need to put forward to your Lordship. And I am in agreement with the time frame that tomorrow be used very productively to try and resolve those issues so that over the weekend I can consult and that by Wednesday we can wrap up this evidence. Thank you.
You will advise Mr. Vanu, you will advise Mr. Kapstein to go there.
Indeed, we have already advised those witnesses, my Lord.
Until probably that these members of the security police were at John Foster Square in Nigeria. Might give evidence that will assist us in determining exactly what happened there. And I'm prepared to hear, and in fact, I'm not here. And so Mr. Castillo.
Mr. Kaji will be on standby.
Yes, and so is Mr. Rodriguez. One hearing tonight. We have to hear first this police witnesses, so that then if you need to respond to what they have to say, you will let us hear the evidence. So tomorrow you will not. You must just prepare yourself to be here sometime Wednesday next week.
Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, my lord. Malene Jr. will take over.
As the clock pleases, my lord, the state calls Mr. Adam.
Your full name and surname? You have an objection and take it oath?
No.
Do you swear that the evidence that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Mr. Adam, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Just be sure you speak in that one. That one, the one in the middle.
Ah,
Yes, that's official.
thank you.
Yes, make this one.
As the clock pleases, my lord. Mr. Adam, is it correct that you are in possession of your statement that's before you?
That's right.
You confirm that is your statement?
True.
You confirm that is your signature?
That's right.
You confirm the contents thereof?
Yep.
My lord, I beg leave to hand in the original to his lordship. Maybe mark H20, my lord. H20, my lord. Thank you. Mr. Adam, how old are you?
Now 70.
Mr. Adam, I just want you to raise your voice a bit so that people in the back can
Can
hear
I
you
stand?
as well. You
it
can
better?
stand or you can be seated.
Get it better?
I'm very difficult to debate.
No, it's too. You can't pull it anymore.
Capital will help you there.
Just pull it forward.
How do you want it? You want to sit down?
Yeah.
Okay, but you're fine. Yeah? It's okay. Just move your seat
That's better.
up front. Okay. Okay. Okay.
You can speak up, Mr. Adam.
Sure.
All those mics will pick you up.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Adam, Dollar's Garage, do you know it?
Yes.
How?
I work there.
Can you inform the court as to from when you were working at Dollar's Garage?
Since 1970. I am still there at the moment for 47 years. I'm now on a part-time basis with them still, but the name has now changed.
Okay, just
The
hold on.
ownership has now changed.
What I'm going to do is you must just watch his lordship's pen
Oh,
and just wait for him to write, and then we'll come back to you. All right?
Okay.
All right. You say you've been working there for 47 years.
that's right.
All right. You are working there at the moment on a
Yes,
part-time basis.
That's right.
What are you doing there, Mr. Adam?
I'm an assistant accountant.
In 1970, am I correct to say that this place of employment was known as Dollar's Garage?
That's correct.
Presently, what is it known as?
Now it's Codeco. K-U-D-E-K-O. Codeco.
Can you spell it for the court?
K-U-D-E-K-O.
Yes.
Auto body. It's a parallel shop.
This Codeco Auto Body, in relation to John Foster Square, as it was known and now as Johannesburg Central, how far is it from each other?
Right opposite.
Now, there was an incident that occurred in 1971 as a result of why you are here today. You confirm that?
That's right.
All right. Tell us what happened.
Well, it was about mid-morning, around our tea time, when the boss called me in.
Stop there. Were you in at Dollar's Garage on that day?
That's right.
We'll come back to the time.
Okay.
Yes, your boss called you in, and then?
And then he said there's some commotion taking place across the street.
Yes.
So I walked across,
Yes.
and they laid a body in the bush, in the shrubs.
Where was this body line? In the shrubs where?
And the shrubs, shall I say, the street is Main Reef Road,
Okay.
right? And the body was lying near the building.
Which building is
John
this?
Foster Square, that time, now Joburg Central Police Station.
Were you the only person there, Mr. Adam?
No, there were quite a few gathered there already.
Before we go on to what you saw, how long did it take you from the time that you received the report up until the time that you went across?
Well, to cross a busy street will take you not less than 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Did you wait there long?
Well, as we got there, we were pushed away, chased away.
Who chased you?
Well, I assume that the security cops, police, sorry,
It was who?
security,
Why do you say that?
because they were of some authority.
Were they in uniform? Can you remember?
I can't recall that.
Can you remember the race?
Mostly white.
Was it only you that was chased away?
No, all of us.
Can you estimate in time-wise how long you stood there?
2, 3 minutes.
Now, this body that you saw, you said was lying, was it in and around the shrub area?
On the shrub, yes, right.
In relation to the wall, can you tell us how far it was, if you can? If you can.
2 meters the most, not even.
Could you tell the race of the person that was lying there?
No.
Could you see if anybody was around the body?
No, I can't recall that.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I don't recall that.
Can you recall how the body was lying?
Well, it was lying, you see, I was about 10 meters away, and what I could see,
What did you see?
a body lying there.
Just the body lying
That's
there.
right.
Position, you can't remember?
I could say it was facing up because the shoe was pointed up.
So the body was lying on the back, shoe facing
Yeah, that's
up.
right. The body was lying on its back.
For those few, for that time period that you were there, did you see the body being moved?
No.
Can you remember whether it was one shoe pointing up, two shoe pointing up?
No, it's too far. I think it's, I can't recall that.
Mr. Ahmed, at the time that you crossed over the street to go to the area where the body was lying, was there any obstructions, any gates, burglar guards?
No,
Maybe?
at that time they had no burglar guards.
So it was just an open access?
Open area, there's a garden like with a bush body light.
After you went back across, did you go back into the building where you were working? Did you stand around and look?
No, not for long though. We stood across the street
And
and went back to my duties.
did you ever see an ambulance coming by?
No,
Now, Let's go back to the time. You said it was about mid-morning, around tea time.
True.
Why do you remember this, Mr. Ahmed?
Because we looked forward to our tea time. We never had breakfast.
Okay, I want you to take this slowly. We looked forward to our tea time. Why?
Because we didn't have breakfast. We got up early.
Slowly.
You said you started break 8.
No, we got up early.
You got up 8.
Yes, sir, with no breakfast.
And
At home,
What time did you start work?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. And what time was your tea time?
At about 10, 10:15.
You sure about it?
100%.
Now, at the time when your boss called you, had you had your tea?
Not yet. The tea was served. So I was upset. I said, why is he calling me now when I can have my tea?
Or they had just served tea?
That's it, yeah.
And he called you to
And he called me to, yeah, that's it.
Thank you, my lord. Why would you not have breakfast before you left home, Mr.
We
Ahmed?
had to get up early.
Why?
No transport.
When you say no transport, can you elaborate for us?
We normally took the JMT buses those days, the red buses. And it was mostly for whites. They only allowed 10 non-whites to a bus. But when the bus came along, it was full. So we had to wait for the next bus, and the next bus, and the next bus. So that's why we had to get up early, hoping that we will get some space in one of the JMT buses as those years.
Did you later learn the identity of the person that had fallen?
Yes, we heard about it.
Tell us how.
It was a Muslim gentleman, firstly. Secondly, it was a school teacher from Rudiport.
Did you know the name of the school teacher from Rudiport?
Now, this from the press only.
What did you hear? What did you read? Press.
That gentleman's name was Ahmed Timol, and he was a school teacher of Rudiport.
How long after you had seen the body, observed the body, did you find out that this gentleman was identified as Ahmed Timol?
Well, it was in the press thereafter, was it?
During the entire time that you were employed at Dollars, did you ever see another body fall?
No.
Mr. Ahmed, there was an inquest, a formal inquest that was held early in 1972. Were you aware of that inquest?
No.
Now, Mr. Ahmed, I see that your statement that's before you is dated today.
Yep.
Can you tell the court when you were approached for a statement?
Oh, you and some gentlemen, ladies and ladies, came along sometime in June.
Was it June
This
of
year,
this year?
this year.
Yes.
Requesting anybody who had seen.
Where were you when you were approached by
I was at work.
a whereabouts?
That's it.
At where you worked, working at the moment?
That's it.
And your statement was obtained when?
This morning, actually.
My lord, the court would just bear with me. I have nothing further for this witness, my lord.
As the court pleases, my lord, a few questions. Mr. Adam, we can return briefly to where you were when your boss called you in.
That's it.
You said you were having tea. Is there a special tea place in the building that you had
No,
tea?
no, they served the tea at the office.
You just said you had
Where-
the tea in
on your
the
table.
office. Okay. And can you describe where in the building your office is located?
Behind, you got a street, right? Behind, in front of the street of John Foster, there's where the boss used to sit, the office. Can you, right? Behind him were the offices, where we occupied as clerical staff.
Would I be correct in saying that in the front there was a filling station
That's right.
and that your offices were behind the filling station?
His office was the front of the filling station.
His office was at the...
In the driveway, on the driveway,
Okay.
let's put it that way, right? Our offices are behind.
Your offices were behind the filling station?
That's it.
But the boss's office was
In the front, right
in front
in the
at
front.
the filling station?
That's it.
And do you think because of the location of your boss's office in the front, that's why he got immediate knowledge of the commotion?
For sure, he had a full view of it.
I assume that your boss is deceased.
Yes, sir.
So did the boss call you, or did he come over
Picked
to
up
you?
his phone. We had an internal phone. He called me on the phone.
He said, come through?
Come down.
And you went immediately?
Yeah, about 2 seconds later.
2 seconds later?
Yeah, about 2 seconds later.
So when you arrived in your boss's office, in your evidence in chief, he said that there's a commotion and please investigate.
Not investigate. You said, what's happening there? Have a look at it.
He asked you to go take a look.
Yes, right. Have a look. The commotion was there. People were there.
So at that point, did you then immediately attempt to go take a look?
Across, that's right.
You crossed. And how long would it have taken you to cross the street?
It's a busy street. The cars are on both sides. 3 to 4 seconds.
3 to 4 seconds. So when
Not 3 to 4 seconds. 3 to 4 minutes. Sorry.
3 to 4 minutes
Yeah,
to cross the road?
Yeah.
That
Because
long?
it's a busy traffic, a busy street.
Okay. Now, you said that on arrival, you noticed the body, but at that particular point, was there anybody else present near or around the body?
Yeah. There were people there already.
There were people there?
That's why he saw the commotion.
Right. And how many people around or near the body, approximately?
I would guess now.
But more than one?
Yeah, definitely. That's why he saw a commotion. People were
A commotion.
gathered in there. There was a commotion.
So we're talking at least a handful, maybe more?
Yeah.
And in your evidence in chief, you made the assumption that these were all security branch.
Not all. They were for spectators as
They
well.
included spectators.
Because we were chased away.
You were chased away.
So, of course, they went away with me as well.
Do you think any spectators got very close to the body, maybe next to the body?
I don't know. I
You
can't
don't know.
recall.
Okay. In terms of spectators, can I ask you to try and recall how many spectators you think were with you? You can't
There were
recall?
quite a few,
But more than one?
Yeah, definitely more than one.
Okay. Now, in your evidence in chief, you said that the body was about 2 meters from the wall. Just to be clear, you're not talking about the edge of the building. You're talking about
The edge of the building.
You're talking about the edge of the building. Okay. Did you notice a small wall that separated the garden from the pavement?
What's the answer?
Yes, it was. Oh, sorry. Sorry, it was. There's a wall.
Yes.
Like a step, like a barrier from the pavement.
Yeah. But a very low barrier.
Yeah, you
easily
can step over it, definitely.
And Mr. Adams, just to assist the court, you can't just nod your head because we need your answer on the record.
Sorry.
So you have to say yes or no.
Yes, it's a small wall.
Thank you. You mentioned that you stopped, but correct me if I'm wrong, about 10 meters away from the body.
That's right.
Is that right? Were you standing on the pavement overlooking the wall?
That's it, looking towards the wall. Not that wall. That wall was there.
That wall was there.
That's it.
But you didn't step over the wall?
No,
So you were not in the garden?
that's it.
Were you on the pavement? Or
On
were
the
you
pavement, yes, right.
On the pavement,
Yeah,
but not
wait,
the road?
Not on the road.
Now, you were able to get a glimpse of the body before you were chased away?
That's it.
Can you just remind us, how long were you able to stare at the body?
Not even 5 minutes, where they asked us to disperse.
Not even 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Was it as long as 5 minutes?
No, less than 5 minutes, I should say.
Less
Just
than
got there and they said, hey, move it up.
Yes. Now, just to return to the orientation of the body, you have testified that the body was on its back, and that the
shoe was pointing up.
The shoe was pointing up, and I noticed you only say one shoe.
You couldn't see very much. As I said, the shrub was there, the body was there. I couldn't even see his clothes. What clothes he had on?
Right. Did you perchance see another shoe maybe lying in the garden? And may I ask you, in which direction was the head pointing?
East. East.
Where would east be? Would it be away from the building? Or?
If I stand forward looking at the building, it will be on my right. The head was on the east, the feet was on the left, on the west.
So just to assist the court, would the feet have been facing the double-decker?
Yes, that's right.
Did you see any people coming out of the building, out of one or more entrances to John Vorster Square? While you were standing on the pavement, did you see people coming and going from the building?
No, my focus was on the body.
Okay. And your testimony is that there were people there already?
That's it.
Did you see the body being removed from...
No. I did specify that on my...
Yes. No, we just
no, I didn't see an ambulance or a police van or anything taking away the body.
So by the time you were chased away, the body was still there?
That's right.
And at no time did you see individuals pick up the body?
No.
Right. And while you were there and there were police officers around the body, did you see what they might have been doing to that body?
No.
Anything else? My Lord, no further questions.
Thank you. So at your filling station there where you worked, were there customers filling up their vehicles at that stage?
All the time. That's quite a busy garage, quite a busy petrol station.
And from what you could observe, did any of the customers also cross the road?
May have.
Did you see anybody?
I didn't take notice.
Can you remember what day of the week this was?
No. 47 years ago.
Yes. Not possible.
You cannot remember.
No. The day, no.
Just say that.
Oh, I cannot. Oh, sorry.
The microphone will be there.
Okay. So, there was no knowledge of the day.
Did you wear a watch at that stage?
Sorry?
Did you wear a watch?
Yes.
Did you specifically take note of the time when you received the call from your boss to go?
It was tea time, as I said. It was tea time.
Yes. I'm asking you, did you look at your watch to see at that stage what time it was?
Tea was normally served between 10 and 10:15.
Do you only have one serving of tea per day?
2.
And when is the other tea?
1 o'clock.
At 1 o'clock.
1 to 1:15.
You don't have an afternoon tea?
No,
at
we don't.
3?
No.
So when you saw the body, can you remember whether anybody was touching the body as it laid on the floor, on the ground there?
No, I can't recall that.
And after you were chased away, what did you do?
Went back to my duties.
To do what?
To my duties.
Did you have your tea?
The tea was cold by then.
So, just to get that clear, so you returned and you continued immediately with your duties?
That's it. No, not immediately. It's quite a while to walk back to your desk.
Yes.
Right? And I asked for a new cup of tea, a warmer cup of tea.
Yes. And you had your cup of tea, and then you did your duties?
That's it.
So, So then, did you not go and report back to your boss to say to him, this is what the commotion was about? There's a dead person lying on the floor in front of John Foster Square?
I just said it's a body lying there. That's what I told him.
So this must have been quite an important event, rather a shocking event. That
Horrific,
you noticed.
more like horrific. We were scared.
Did you tell people about it? The fact that you saw it, did you make it known to people that you actually saw the body lying there on the ground in front of John Foster Square?
Of course, that evening I spoke to my friends.
And I suppose that you read also the newspaper reportings quite diligently to find out what it was all about?
No, not at that time. No. No, I didn't follow the inquest thereafter.
Did you not?
No. But among the community they were speaking, it was a Muslim gentleman, there was a school teacher, there was some road report.
And in the newspaper clippings of what you've read, was there any time that they say that he fell, at what time that he fell?
I never read that, never saw the report.
So, when you returned, did you continue to watch what was happening
No,
there to see how this event unfolded with
No, sir.
what was happening, whether the ambulances come, what?
No. Because the office, his office was in the front, our office was behind. It doesn't interlead or you can't see. It's concealed completely.
Were you not curious, sir? Was this not
Of course.
something that jogged your curiosity?
Of course, it was curious.
But you did not
I didn't
continue
take,
to see what
no,
was
that's it.
happening.
It was disturbing, let's put it that way.
Yes. And did you at any stage make any notes with regard to what you saw there?
No.
So 46 years later, you are asked about people, about this event, and you vividly remembered it
That's it.
as well as the time.
That's it. The time was very clear.
Is there any specific reason? I mean, was there anything that made you specifically remember that? And why I'm putting this to you, sir, is that 46 years is a long time, and if this incident was not of such a nature that it jogged your curiosity for you to be involved and to want to see what's happening, to want to read what's happening, why would you remember the time of this incident 46 years later?
Because I repeat myself, I was well interested in my tea and my sandwich at that time.
So the shoe that that you saw that pointed upwards, did you only see a shoe pointing upwards, or did you see the whole body pointing upwards?
The body was in the shrub,
Yes.
right? The feet were sticking out. So the shrub blocked the vision. That's why I couldn't see the nationality nor the person.
So you basically just saw a shoe pointing up and you...
That's it.
Yes. So the instructions from the police there is that this matter happened in the afternoon in the vicinity of 4 o'clock. At what time did you finish work?
5.
Did anything else happen that day that drew your attention towards John Foster Square?
No.
There were no sirens going there.
No, that I recall, no.
The street in front of John Foster Square at that stage, you've already indicated that it is quite busy with vehicles travelling there. And what was the situation with pedestrians walking on the pavement, either on your side of the street or on the side of the police station?
What was their reaction?
Yes.
I don't know. They may have gone across, I can't recall.
But when you've worked there, and obviously you've been there frequently in that time, were there a lot of pedestrians walking up and down on the street area there in the mornings? Was it a busy section of Johannesburg City?
It is. There must be people walking up and down.
None, my lord.
My lord, with your leave, I wonder if I can just clarify two very quick points. Mr. Adam, from your vantage point, could you see whether the individual lying in the shrub, whether he was alive or dead?
No.
You
No.
couldn't see breathing or anything of that nature?
No.
Lastly, if the body was blocked by shrubs, obscuring your vision, how was it that you could still see that the head was pointing towards the east?
Because his feet was to the left.
No further questions.
None, my lord.
Thank you.
My lord, perhaps it would be an appropriate time to take a tea break. Yes. As the court pleases, my lord.
My lord, we're entirely flexible. If the court wishes to proceed, then we're ready.
Let's proceed. How many more?
Just one, my lord.
Yes, then let's proceed.
My lord, our next witness is the forensic pathologist, Dr. Steve Naidu. We'd like to call him to the stand. Just remind me to do that after this.
My name is Segrin Ramalu Naidu.
Do you have any objection in taking the oath?
No.
Do you swear that the evidence that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
So help me God.
Dr. Naidu, you sit down.
Thanks. I prefer to stand. Thank you.
Dr. Naidu, firstly, thank you for returning to the stand, and thank you for travelling up from Durban to be with us today. Dr. Naidu, as you're aware, you have already provided evidence before this court, expert evidence, and you've already submitted a report to this court. And as you're further aware, the court has requested you to return in order to answer a discrete question in relation to the time of death. In particular, whether it could have been possible for Mr. Timol to have fallen and died in the earlier hours of that day, as in the morning, as opposed to later that afternoon. Dr. Naidu, have you provided a further report dated 9th of August titled Supplementary Medical Legal Report 2?
Yes.
Your Lordship, my junior has just advised me that we haven't as yet handed up this particular report. We'd like to do so now. All the parties have a copy, and we'd like to mark it Exhibit C17. Yes. Now, Dr. Naidu, your report deals with the question of timing, but it also deals with other issues such as a certain head injury. We're only going to deal with the question of timing this morning. Your submissions in relation to the head injury are in writing and will be before the court. But just to advise you that this morning's testimony is confined to the question of timing. Now, Dr. Naidu, in your report, you have set out the extents and limits of medical science in determining the time of death.
Yes.
Can you set out for the court what those are?
In my own words, not quoting the author that I've cited, because that very important focus of the medical legal scene examination, not the autopsy, the scene examination is to determine the cause, the precise time of death. It is also important to recognize that it can only be expressed in a range in time between two knowns, and that is the last time, the two knowns are the last time the deceased was in fact confirmed to have been alive, and the second known is the last time, well, the time he was found dead or known to have died. We know that the time of death exists between those 2 points, and to establish that is an estimate that can be narrowed with scientific examination and testing to the best we can do, but it's still expressed as a range, and it's still an estimate. I would like to just specify that when you express a range, it is accurate in that the time of death is within that range, but it's not very precise because you can't narrow that range adequately to the way we would like to have it.
That would be the doctor's examination.
That's right.
Of time.
Yes.
And that would be independent from other factual evidence that will be around.
That's right. Purely on the scientific medical evidence, my
yes,
lord.
if we were to assume that there were no witnesses and a body has been found, and there's no information indicating when the person passed on, so the doctors examining the body to be able to work within a range.
That's correct.
Taking into account what?
The early changes after death, in the category that we call early postmortem changes, and there are 3 or 4 principal ones, and we use those because we know their ranges to establish that range and pronounce on that range of when the death occurred.
The reason why you were recalled, doctor, is that we are having evidence where, in terms of Mr. Rodriguez,
yes,
according to him, Mr. Timol died late in the afternoon, around 4 o'clock.
That's correct.
Just after he fell. Then we have evidence, out of it you heard it this morning, that the fall occurred mid-morning.
Yes.
This is the second witness who says that. And there's another witness again who placed it in the morning.
Yes.
Now, when I looked at the report, medical legal postmortem examination, it states here on the first page that the deceased was found dead as informed on 27 October 1971. This is now Dr. Skipper's writing.
That's correct.
Then he says, and then in brackets, the time of death was not recorded.
That's correct.
Now, I take it there's a difference between the time of death and the time when the doctor confirms or declares that the person died.
Yes.
Now, here you point out in your report about what Dr. M, who was first on the scene, said concerning his declaration of death. Because I saw it here, it must have been I think it's on the way you told him, the African version as well as you give it in this translation. That is on paragraph 7.
Yes, it is.
This report that I've just received now.
Yes.
And what do you make of this? Assuming he was right, he was called in at 15:55, and he arrived at 16:05, according to what I've written here. By the way, you took this information from his after.
That's correct.
Yes. And he examined the body, and he concluded in Afrikaans as follows: waar die lichaam van 'n indierman aan my interview was. Men kon dit vasgestel dat hy reeds dood was. Hy was pas dood. Net listen. Pas listen. Now, in light of this, and the evidence that I have, that's the difficulty I have. That's why I asked you and Dr. Holland to come through and help me clear this. What was the time of death?
Yes. Allow me to state then, to rephrase what I think the court, to see if I'm correct, that the court wants to understand the use of the word post-duet, the use of the word a recently dead person. I think that's the core need today for this court. And I'd like to state that the way we see it, as a forensic pathologist, as a doctor, recently dead would mean a death that is fresh, but not exhibiting any signs of any obvious post-mortem change. The short answer is that I would believe that recently dead would, because you are not seeing any changes of decay, it can range, in my estimate, between half an hour after death to about 24 hours. Yes. Because, my lord, there is hardly any way to differentiate in that range of time between a body that is 1 hour old, dead for an hour, or dead for several hours, unless a proper examination was conducted.
Well, I'm unable to find in the report whether, for example, it's known that the rigor mortis sets in after a person passes away, and the determination of the liability as well would give an indication as to more or less when death could have occurred.
Yes.
That's what most of the specialists point out, that you look at the rigor of the body,
yes,
the rigor mortis and the post-mortem liability. Now, I couldn't find that on the report as to an indication. I guess Dr. Sklepers was not seized with that problem, because he was not on the scene. He did the post-mortem on the 29th, and Mr. Timol passed on the 27th, so that was 3 days after. So the time of death was not really preoccupation, but then it has become an issue here before us. And that's why you've been called to come and assist us, whether from your reading of the post-mortem and other evidence around it, and whether it would be possible for Dr. Kemp to express this view, even though he came later in the day. I just want to have you assist us.
Very much so. My opinion is that within a space of a few hours, there's hardly any, there's no record of it, of what he observed, but there would hardly be any differences in the observations of a person who died within an hour or within a few hours. And the reason for this, my lord, is that most medical legal death attendants at the scene, whether they be clinical forensic practitioners or district surgeons, as they used to be called, or a forensic pathologist, would look at specific changes, or normally would look at specific changes, and that is rigor mortis, livor mortis, or lividity, and alga mortis, that is the progressive change in temperature, the drop in temperature, to make an assessment like that. It is not, my expression is that in my report is it's not as if the forensic death scene attendant, unlike the paramedic, who would look for signs of life, that is the immediate signs of life or death, in order to decide whether to start resuscitation or not. A forensic death scene attendant would be looking at post-mortem changes, the very early ones. And those post-mortem changes will begin, and I'm going to give the widest range in time, and they would begin at about half an hour, the early post-mortem change of livability. But whether it be perceptible at half an hour, it just depends on things like skin color, etc. And right up in the South African context of the weather and climate, say, I would put it at 24 hours. So the early post-mortem changes that a forensic death scene attendant would be looking at, they would be changing, dynamically changing, but would be hardly perceptible to the ordinary eye unless you do a careful examination in that time. I don't know what sort of examination that Dr. Kemp had done at that stage. So it's impossible to determine, determine that. We just go on his record. A recent death does not necessarily mean a death that is just a few minutes past. It could be several hours past from the perspective of the forensic examiner at the scene.
Thank you, my lord. Dr. Naidu, if I can just draw your attention back to the post-mortem report, paragraph 3 of the schedule of observations.
Yes.
And I think this should be brought to the attention of the court. It says secondary post-mortem changes, none.
That's correct.
And what do you make of that entry?
That the body had not started to alter and decompose, that the body was reasonably intact and not exhibiting any changes of decomposition.
Alternatively, as you've testified a few minutes ago, perhaps Dr. Skepa saw no need to make any comments on that aspect.
Yes, of course, yes. That is a very common possibility that the autopsy practitioner may neglect to describe that adequately.
You also mentioned in response to a question from the court that paramedics who are typically on the scene first carry out some kind of standard death declaration.
Yes.
Can you describe to the court what that typically is?
Well, what the paramedics would do would look at, the emergency practitioner would do is look at signs of life, and one of the first things he would do is feel for pulse, and pulse would be not so much at the wrist. They tend to go for the larger bore vessels, the stronger pulses, such as in the neck. They will auscultate, listen to the heartbeat, for heartbeat at the same time, and also observe for breathing, looking at the expansion or the movement of the chest, and then, of course, look at signs of neural reactivity, such as particularly looking at the eye, looking at the pupillary response, and maybe a gag reflex, etc. So what you're looking is for signs of life, and then making a decision as to if the signs of life there, I would immediately institute artificial respiration or resuscitation if I was a paramedic.
And your report also makes reference to something called PMI, post-mortem interval.
Correct.
And that observations should typically be made of the early post-mortem changes. If there are any observations in addition to the ones that you've just mentioned, could you advise the court what kinds of observations would normally have been made?
Additional to the...
Well, in other words, what would be the objectives of an examination at the scene of death?
Oh, yes. the objectives of any forensic examiner at the scene would be to capture as much information so as to be able to reconcile the history that accompanies that event with the findings, collection of paraphernalia that might help determine the nature of the death, observe the injuries or the lack of them, and of course determine the time of death. So those are probably the main purposes or the main objectives of that.
Yes. And I'm actually just looking, oddly enough, at a footnote that you have, footnote 3 it is, on page 3, because it includes those observations, but also determination of body core temperature.
Yes.
So that's typically done at the scene as well?
At the scene, yes.
And you've also mentioned that typically one would make an observation around the condition and soiling of the clothing, bloodstain patterns. Typically there would be scene photography and, as you said, collection of paraphernalia and other evidence.
Yes.
But as we know, that is not available in this particular instance.
That's correct.
Dr. Naidu, you've testified that the early post-mortem changes are observed from between half an hour to around 24 hours onwards.
Yes.
When you say half an hour, is it possible that it could be less than half an hour?
Oh yes. The range is never precise. It's quite inexact. It's a good working range. But certainly, in fact, what is believed is that post-mortem lividity, the dependent sagging of the blood in vessels begins immediately after death within a few seconds, but it's only perceptible to the examiner from about half an hour onwards.
Just returning briefly to Dr. Kemp's statement that was filed in the inquest court. My Lord, that's volume B, page 44. You referred to it as a minimalist report. Would you describe it as satisfactory?
If that was the total crime scene, not necessarily crime scene, we call it a death scene because it incorporates all deaths. If that was the total death scene examination report, then it's wholly inadequate and insufficient for any purpose whatsoever.
So your report has several conclusions. So one of them is that on the basis of what Dr. Kemp had to say in his statement, on the basis of what you could glean from the autopsy report, do you maintain that it's impossible to state what specific post-mortem stage the body was at?
It's impossible to state that stage within the early post-mortem interval. Certainly, we can state that the body was not decomposed, that rate of decay, because we know the body was reasonably fresh, or it would have, according to Dr. Skeppers, who mentioned no post-mortem changes. But other than that, it's not possible to state at which stage of post-mortem change the body was.
Yes. And perhaps to cut to the chase, the bottom line, in answer to the question posed by the court, in your opinion on the available medical evidence, is it possible to say that this particular individual died in the earlier part of the day or died in the later part of the day?
No, the medical evidence is not able to make that distinction, and I don't believe, and I stand here, and I don't believe, I stand here, I believe I can have the support of any reasonable forensic medical expert on the basis of the available medical evidence. There's no way to make that distinction as to whether the body would have been had died in the early part of the day or the latter part of the day. There's no way of saying it. I believe it can equally. It's equally possible that the person could have died in the early part of the day, as it is possible in the later part of the day when discovered.
And the person, of course, is Mr. Timol that you're referring to?
Yes, I'm referring to this in this context, this particular case.
Okay. Anything else? No further questions.
Again, going back to the past,
Yes.
I assume that is the reason that is referring to maybe inclination to decomposition. There is a part to what you may account that we should realizing that decomposition is not certain.
Yes. My Lord, may I state this? First of all, we don't have. First of all, I agree.
Yes,
I agree. Yes.
There's no information yet, but I'm trying to interpret this that Dr. Ken wrote, which is really a paragraph.
Yes. I do agree, and let me just summarize by saying that it's quite possible that Dr. Kemp's, because in his visible examination of the body, we don't know how long it took, because he did not see any changes of decomposition, he says he would have concluded in written form just dead, because there's no signs of decomposition. Yes.
Thank you, my Lord. Yes, your conclusion, actually, we find it in paragraph 35, the second sentence there. Certainly it's set out there. It's my opinion on available evidence that the deceased could equally have fallen in the earlier part of the day as much as it would be possible in the latter part of the day when the body was first medically examined. Is that your conclusion?
That's correct.
Thank you, my Lord.
Thank you, the Lord.
Note of the additional opinion expressed in the report, but need not testify.
Thank you.
My Lord, we have no further witnesses for today. And my Lord, we're of the view that Dr. Holland can merely submit her report to you. At this stage, we don't intend to call you, subject to your directions. If you do wish to have her called, we will make her available.
But for the record, she expresses a similar opinion. She cannot say exactly what the panel said.
That is correct, Your Lordship. Yes.
Yes, let's have that report. There's no need for her to submit. But I want to go through this.
Yes. And Your Lordship, we would like to hand up her report as well as a few other documents. Perhaps we can hand the bundle to your clerk. Lord, the first two documents are not exhibits. The first document is an updated list of exhibits as at 10 August. The second document is an updated list of witnesses.
Which one is there now?
My Lord, I'm now at C16, which is the supplementary report of Dr. Shakira Holland. It has a letterhead saying Gauteng Province, University of the Witwatersrand. We've marked her report C16. My Lord, the next exhibit is an affidavit from Mutondi Muladzi. She is an attorney at the Legal Resources Centre, one of our instructing attorneys. And her affidavit sets out her efforts in approaching the South African Weather Service in order to establish the time of sunset on the 27th of October 1971. Your Lordship, we believe this may be of relevance in relation to the allegation of the police that following the fall it was too dark to take photographs. And as you will note from paragraph 7 onwards, through a method that is set out in this affidavit, the time of the sunset, the estimate for the sunset on that day is 18:20:57, so essentially 21 minutes past 6. And so we then estimate that there would have been around 2 hours and 25 minutes between the alleged time of the fall by the police and the time of sunset. My Lord, the next exhibit is an affidavit by Monica Dube. We have marked this affidavit H18. My Lord, we don't intend to call this witness. The import of this particular affidavit is that the deponent was detained in the early 1980s at John Vorster Square, and she was interrogated, and one of her interrogators said that they would do to her what they did to Timol, which was to push her out the window. My Lord, the next exhibit is a page from the Truth and Reconciliation Report. We have marked it H19. It discloses a finding at paragraph 125 that one of the interrogators alleged to have been interrogating Mr. Timol, Captain Hans Kloy, attended an interrogation course in France with other individuals, including Roy Rus Swanepoel, who's also featured in the evidence, and we will make reference to that in argument.
You say it's page 19.
It should be a single page, Your Lordship, with quite small writing. If you don't have it, we'll hand up another copy. Please hand this up. Is that marked? And finally, Your Lordship, we have Exhibit Volume M. This has already been handed up in its original format, and you'll recall these were the building plans, which were rather large and cumbersome. At the court's request, we have reduced these plans to A3 size, which can now be easily filed. And Lord, that concludes the exhibits for today.
I would suggest, my Lord, that we stand down till Monday. I'll keep all the parties informed as the consultations, and if any of the statements is finalized, I'll give copies of the statements to the relevant parties, my Lord. But I suggest we stand down till Monday for the conclusion of all the witnesses that should be seen, my Lord.
Yes, I need to emphasize this again. It should be witnesses who were in the building from Vorster Square or around the building, as at the time when Mr. Timol passed on, should be on the 27th of October. Those are the witnesses that I would like to hear.
As a court.
Something out of the ordinary, but that is one of the cases. So that then we should come to an end of this. We'll then adjourn until Monday, 10 o'clock.
As the court pleases, my Lord.
All right.
Anthony, can I get my H19? It's there. H19, they already documented it.
Are you standing in?